First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech, but that right is continually being challenged by politicians, social media, cancel culture. Do you say what you really think? Have you been censored? The First Amendment and censorship took center stage last week when President Trump signed an executive order regarding flag burning. I don't know if you remember this. We talked a lot about this in the beginning of the week. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner on the Cooner Report. Jeff will be back on Monday. But what the president did last week is likely set to challenge what a lot of people think about censorship. And it's going to challenge a Supreme Court ruling that protected the burning of the American flag under the First Amendment with a new executive order calling for those who desecrate the U.S. flag while inciting violence or breaking other laws to face prosecution. He gives it, I believe it's a year jail sentence. That's cut 2, please, Mike.
All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You can do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. But when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy.
People do go crazy, but is a law prohibiting the burning of a flag censorship? Does it fly against the First Amendment? It's a tricky question. Censorship is a tricky question. And I'm wondering, do you think censorship has gotten better or worse in the past year? 617-266-6868 is the number here. 617-266-6868. As I said before, this is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. Jeff has been out because he was in a bus accident in Croatia. Well, sort of a bus accident. I spoke with him yesterday, and he's hoping to be back on Monday. He was on a double-decker bus in Croatia with his son, Ashton, and they were moving up to the second level of the bus because the first level was full when the bus driver jammed on the brakes and Jeff went flying. It sounds to me like down the stairs, and he was pretty badly injured. And he waited till he got back to the U.S. to seek medical attention, and he is on the mend, but not in a position where he could comfortably sit in front of a microphone. But he's sounding good. And he's hoping to be back on Monday. So all thoughts and prayers for Jeff. And Ashton is fine, by the way. Ashton did not take a header. So Ashton is doing just fine. So today we're talking, as I said, about censorship. And I think the flag burning is one. I pulled that out because it's something that has been in the news in the past week that is a form of censorship. And you have to decide what is acceptable censorship and what isn't. And what is censorship and what isn't. And it's easier to see censorship in actions regarding writing or speech more so than something that's as emotionally invested as flag burning. For instance, there was an atrocious case this past week in England. An award-winning Irish comedy writer by the name of Graham Linehan was arrested in London over posts on social media criticizing transgenderism. That sounds like something out of a sitcom itself, doesn't it? That couldn't possibly happen. He is a very celebrated comedian. He's very famous. He created a bunch of stuff that's on British TV, and a lot of things which I know are watched in this country, like Father Ted and The It Crowd. And what he said happened was when he arrived at Heathrow Airport, he was met by 5 armed police officers who arrested him over 3 tweets. Now, first, I want you to remember something. British police are not armed, generally speaking. They don't carry guns. They carry batons, and it's only special forces, a special branch, that are armed. He was met by armed police officers. And he's told the story on his Substack account. He said, in a country where pedophiles escape sentencing, where knife crime is out of control, where women are assaulted and harassed every time they gather to speak, the state had mobilized 5 armed officers to arrest a comedy writer for this tweet. And this and he said, "I promise I am not making this up." These are the posts for which he was arrested, according to him. One included one in which he argued that biological men who enter female-only spaces are committing a violent and abusive act. And he says, "Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls." Another tweet or posting included a photograph of an LGBTQ plus rally in London, which he captioned, "A photo you can smell." And the third offending post said, "I hate them, misogynists and homophobes, bleep them." Only he didn't say, bleep. According to Linehan, the sole condition for his release was that he no longer post on the X social media platform. So they'll only let him go if he stops talking, basically. He says, "I was arrested at an airport like a terrorist, locked in a cell like a criminal, taken to hospital because the stress nearly killed me, and banned from speaking online, all because I made jokes that upset some psychotic cross-dressers." That was his response to all of this. He says, "To me, this proves one thing beyond doubt. The UK has become a country that is hostile to freedom of speech, hostile to women, and far too accommodating to the demands of violent, entitled, abusive men who have turned the police into their personal goon squad." What is your response to this? I mean, has he been censored? Was he rightly censored or wrongly censored, if you say yes? I'm not sure there is a rightly censored, but we can talk about that. The Free Speech Union in England announced that it would be supporting Linehan in the case, and they posted on X, since, he can no longer post on X, "We do not believe Graham's arrest or the bail conditions imposed were lawful. We will be backing him all the way in his fight against these preposterous allegations and the disproportionate response from the police." Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we just hear UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, while visiting the White House, and specifically assuring President Trump and Vice President Vance that the United Kingdom still has freedom of speech? Wow. I'm not sure they do. Did you know that according to the Times of London, that police in Britain made over 12,000 arrests for posts online in 2023 and make approximately 33 arrests every single day regarding online posts? I was completely shocked by that. Is that where we're headed in the United States? Is this one of those moments, there but for the grace of God, go I? Are we going to be in a UK-type state? Is that where censorship is headed here? Or has it been stopped? Was it going there and now it's no more? Have you ever been censored? I'm going to make that the poll question today. The poll question is sponsored by Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. You can take it on X at the Cooner Report or at WRKO/Cooner. Have you ever been censored? I'm really interested to find out what percentage of this audience has had to deal with censorship. There are still guardians of free speech out there in the U.S. We saw this happen in California when a federal judge threw out 2 laws that were signed last year by California Governor Gavin Newsom that banned so-called deep fake videos of politicians, calling the legislation, the court called the legislation an unconstitutional form of censorship. Okay. At the time, what they're talking about is Newsom signed this law. There are 2 laws, AB 2655 and AB 2839. They were in response to Elon Musk sharing a spoof campaign ad that made fun of Democrat presidential candidate Kamala Harris. That's when this was done. Musk responded at the time that he had consulted with Professor Sugun Deesnuts and had been told that parody is still legal in America. I want to play for you. This Babylon Bee also responded to Newsom with a fake campaign video. This is the Babylon Bee's fake campaign video that they put out there. Cut 60, please, Mike.
Hi, I'm Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This is a message for the people of America, given in my authentically recorded, non-AI voice. Thanks to my leadership over the last several years, California has become a world leader in extremist, left-wing governance. My policies were so effective that almost 1 million people are now fleeing the state every year. We even ran out of U-Hauls. During the COVID pandemic, I locked everyone in their homes and shut down businesses for months. Not the French Laundry, though. That's my favorite restaurant. Last year, I cleaned up the dangerous, messy streets of San Francisco, because Chinese Communist President Xi was coming, and I really wanted to impress him. He's my boss, after all. This year, I signed legislation that allows me to take custody of your kid if you refuse to give him artificial hormones and chop off his genitals. Because if you don't do that, you're a bigot, and bigots shouldn't be allowed to have kids.
I find it funny. Do you find it funny? But under Newsom's bill, that's not allowed. Is that censorship? Have you been censored? 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Cooner. He'll be back on Monday. Our text number is 70470. Have you been censored? That's my question that I have for you. It's a question that we're putting on the poll as well. And on the text line, 508 says, you censored somebody yesterday in your show. He made a point, and then you made a 15-minute point to tell him he can't make it. And then same texter says, and you just censored yourself. Why can't you say bleep? Yeah, those are both examples of censorship. Here's the difference. So the FCC has regulations that you have to follow in regard to broadcasting. You can't swear on the air or you're fined. I could swear, but they're going to fine my company if I do so. You also can't slander somebody who's a private person. You can go after a public person sometimes, but not always. But you can't slander somebody, and meaning you can't put out something that has no basis in fact. And what I said to the caller yesterday who was trying to pass a rumor along is that I understand, if that's true, it's bad news, but you can't just make baseless accusations. That is actually going to get you in trouble legally. Is that a form of censorship? I think it is. But there's a specific law behind it. So I think what I'm saying is we have to be careful of establishing laws that are overbroad in regard to censorship. But that's not what happened in England. In England, the comedy writer was censored for an opinion, not because he was swearing, not because he was slandering somebody. He was giving an opinion. And that kind of censorship, I think, is unacceptable. Do you see the difference? Do you think there is a difference? Or do you think that both are equally bad? It's just like the Supreme Court has said you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. That's a violation. It's not a violation of free speech. It's an exception to the First Amendment. And here's the thing, though. You can yell fire if there is a fire, but you can't create a situation that causes harm. That's basically what the slander laws are out to protect, or are designed to protect. And I am not really sure, other than community standards is what the Supreme Court says is why you cannot say on broadcast radio, certain words. And that's why I said bleep instead of certain words. Now, you can on cable, because the same laws do not apply to cable, because you pay for cable. But on free public access airways, which is what broadcast radio is, there are rules. And we're supposed to follow them. And is that a form of censorship? I believe it is. But is some censorship good? That's one of the questions. And you have to determine which ones are good and which ones aren't. And in regard to California, that was another form of censorship that I thought the judge did a good job of striking down, because that was a sense of humor. That was parody. And what Governor Newsom was trying to do was basically destroy parody, which was very ironic because Governor Newsom, who wanted to ban deep fake parody on the internet, Well, at the same time, he's trolling President Trump with imitation posts and turning the governor's, his own official Express feed into a parody account. But yet he tried to ban parody because this move last year to ban so-called deceptive materials required social media to enforce the ban. And his administration tried to argue that parody would still be allowed as long as there was a disclaimer. But the judge, God bless him, Judge John Mendez of the Eastern District of California, said requiring a disclaimer kills the joke. And I don't think they understood what he was saying. Because meanwhile, he and his staff have continued to post in all caps on X in an apparent attempt to imitate President Trump's social media rhetoric, doing exactly what the governor sought to ban. So he is pretty much not only a censor, but a hypocrite censor at the same time. Have you been censored? Is any censorship good, or should all censorship be banned? Let's go with Andy in Milford. Andy, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Good morning, Sandy, and best wishes to Jeff Cooner to get well and get back 100%.
Oh, thank you. I know he appreciates that.
Yeah, I cannot identify a personal situation where I've been censored, Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems I see here is Sandy, is all things are not equal. And I'll give you an example, like flag burning. Okay, so we have the 1989 Supreme Court decision that flag burning is supposedly a First Amendment expression. However, I would challenge anybody, try burning an LGBTQ or pride flag in the middle of Brookline or in the middle of Cambridge or in the middle of Boston for that matter. I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get arrested. You're going to get charged with a hate crime. Or they're going to make something up. And that's the big problem I see. And because of that situation and because of the abuse that President Trump has encountered with a number of these Article 3 judges, I have no problem with his executive order against flag burning in the current context.
So you don't view that as censorship?
I don't. And again, people who desecrate that pride flag are not treated equal.
No, I agree with you that all things are not equal. And one of the things I point to is that case that just happened in the UK that I was talking about. This guy posted he doesn't like transgenders. And he finds them, it's his opinion, and he posted his opinion, and he's a comedian. So one could say, is that parody that he's talking about? And he's arrested by armed officers at the airport, Andy. That's not being treated equally either. Of course, it's the UK. This is Sandy Shack in for Jeff Kuhner. We're talking about censorship. Is there ever a time when censorship is appropriate? Is censorship getting better or worse? Have you been censored? I'm trying to get a handle on how many people have come up against this. Text number 70470. On the text line 207 says, I'm always on the AOL Yahoo comment section, and the last 2 days I can't respond to comments on my posts. That tells me I'm over the target. Yeah, I think when you start getting censored, it means you've discovered a sore point, I suspect. And by the way, Mike got censored. He got kicked off of X last week. Still does not know why. He still instead. Yeah, he still doesn't know why, and he just opened another account under a fake name so he can continue to text with people. He has some theories, but he's still nobody's ever responded. Isn't that part of the problem? Nobody ever responds. to when you ask the question, why was I censored? Because, I guess that extends the conversation that they want to have shut down. Dave in Pennsylvania, have you been censored?
Good morning, Sandy. How are you?
Good morning.
Yeah, hey, listen, I think that liberals should be censored, but that would be unfair because we wouldn't be able to hear how much they make themselves look like asses. I mean, I'm sure they feel the same way, but there are just some things that are too outlandish that do need to be censored, Sandy. I mean, common sense, not constitutional-wise. I mean, we follow that. We all agree. But the thing is that just some things that are so outlandish that, people don't really need to hear.
Such as?
Well, like... what's a good example? Like some of this LGBT stuff. I mean, they go way, way, way over the top, Sandy. Well,
here's the problem with that, Dave. Censorship comes from the government, generally speaking. Sometimes it can come from, a bot on social media, but generally speaking, it's from the government. Well, like when I stopped that gentleman yesterday from talking about a rumor he had heard about the Boston mayor, that's the FCC speaking through me. That's a government entity speaking through me because they put the rules down. So it's generally, so do you want the government deciding what's reasonable and what's not reasonable? Because that's what you're saying. You don't find what the LGBTQ community says to be reasonable, so you want them censored. But in 5 years, somebody else is making the decision and they want you censored. Do you really want speech censored based upon, what you find obnoxious? Because it's going to be, what your legal representative finds obnoxious. And we just lived through 4 years, Dave, of somebody of the Biden administration finding anything critical of Biden to be unacceptable. So, and that was censored. What you're saying is the same thing. It's just from the other side of the fence. Does that make sense to you?
You're right.
I know that I understand exactly what you're saying, but free speech is only free speech if everybody has the right to it, including those people that you disagree with and including those people that you find offensive and obnoxious. Just like the guy in the UK, he was just putting his opinion out there and they arrested him with armed police. I mean,
yes,
that's what you're talking about. But you're talking about it from, you're simply switching it over and saying, well, I want it for people that I don't agree with. Does that really work? You can't do that, can you?
Right, Sandy, you're 100% correct.
So, but I understand what you're saying. You find it offensive. My response when you find something offensive is turn it off. Don't listen anymore. When I was growing up, Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, was on a jihad regarding a particular radio DJ she didn't like, and she wanted him taken off the air. And I was a little girl or teenager at the time, little girl at the time, and I didn't really care about that DJ one way or the other. But what I remember saying to my parents is, what is her problem? If she doesn't like it, can't she just turn the radio off? And I mean, that is you're talking about common sense. That is the common sense response when you don't like something. You don't stop the person from saying something. You turn it off. You walk away. You don't have to listen. And I think that's the common sense approach to when you hear something you don't like. And that's why I really, other than when I am prescribed by law, which I was yesterday by the FCC, I could not allow certain things to go on the air because my company would be fined. The FCC prohibits it. Those are government decisions. And I agree that it is censorship, without a doubt. But it's censorship that I'm required to do because, and when I'm in front of the microphone, I'm acting as an extension of the FCC, who has, in fact, licensed this company under certain guidelines. You agree to follow the rules that they set out. Otherwise, you don't get to keep your license. And that is censorship. I completely agree that that's censorship. The question becomes, is some censorship permissible? And I think, yes, some censorship is permissible, but I think we have to be extremely careful. And I don't think we can really abdicate censorship of people's opinions to the government. I think that way lies a lot of problems. Thank you for the call, Dave. I appreciate very much. Vince from Germany, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Vince? Vince?
Good. How you
doing? Hi. Have you ever been censored, Vince?
Hey. Oh, several times. Before X on Twitter, I had several accounts. I had to start accounts under pseudonyms or, aliases, whatever.
Yeah, Mike just had to do that last week. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really bad. Even on X, I've been put in timeout. How long has he owned X? The last couple of years. So I've been put in out a few times. What I was going to say for the UK is, everything's a test bed in the UK. The surveillance state, the censorship state. They test it out in the UK and then they bring it to the States. And, this goes all the way back to political correctness in the early 90s, how they started to come and say that, oh, you're offensive to people, you're hurting their feelings. If you are able to say certain things about certain people, identify them as, black or Negro instead of African American, that's demeaning and stuff. And those are common sense things to people in their mind. They're like, yeah, that is demeaning. You shouldn't be able to say that, right? But that's like the camel's nose under the tent, Yeah. It just expands, it grows off of that, I have been censored. Absolutely. And I think I have to say this. I think that there should be some censorship, but that's really, you get into the FCC thing, no swearing, television, right? We know that sex and violence is damaging the children. They shouldn't watch it. That stuff should be regulated.
Well, it is regulated. That's what the safe harbor stuff is for. They do it after 10 o'clock at night. You can air things you can't air before 10 o'clock at night. And that's for that reason, because of kids. So there's language you can use on broadcast radio and television after 10, and subject matter you can really delve into after 10 that you can't before, for exactly the reason that you're talking about.
Right, and why are kids even up at 10? You know what I mean?
Well, that's why it's 10 o'clock. Well, that's why it's 10 o'clock. They said it at 10 o'clock because theoretically most kids are asleep by then. That's why it's 10.
Should be asleep at 9, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
arbitrary.
It's been a slow deterioration. It's been a slow deterioration over the last. I'd say I was born in 68, so it's been a slow deterioration since the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, all the social upheaval and stuff. America lost its innocence during Vietnam, and we've been in a decline ever since then. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think of the guy in England being ordered not to be on social media? This isn't social media kicking him off. This is a judge saying you cannot use social media. So to me, that is one of the scariest aspects. First of all, the fact that armed police came to get him when the police in England aren't armed. It's not like every police officer has a gun. One, that just shows the level of their ire. The fact that he was tweeting out, and secondly, I read the tweets on the air. Can they be thought of as offensive? Sure, but are they offensive enough to be met by armed police? To me, Vince, that is what happens when you let the government choose what is reasonable and what is non-offensive. It's one thing to say you can't say the 7 deadly words under the FCC, but that's not what he was doing. Well, he didn't win, but that's not what their problem was. Their problem was that he went after a particular group of people. This is Sandy Shack in for Jeff Cooner here on the Cooner Report. We're talking about censorship. Have you been censored? Is censorship ever a good idea? Let's talk to John in Peabody. John, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Hey, Sandy. Thank you for having me back.
You're welcome, John. Have you been censored?
No, I I don't spend a lot of time technically at all with social media. But
it doesn't have to be on social media. You can be told not to say something in public. You can be
anywhere.
Yeah.
But growing up as a kid and even as a young adult, I never dealt with anything like this. Where people are just easily offended. But I thought sticks and stones broke bones. But now, words, like I said, put you in traction. Say the wrong thing and someone's going to pounce like the cat and mouse. Mm-hmm. But I'd say to my friends, I says, go ahead and put some of these liberals and these people who complain about things like this in a boot camp for 8 weeks. They're either going to quit or cry. Because I'll tell you what, that drill sergeant, he won't hold back. And I have friends who did a lot of military time, and they said, you want to hear some of the things you don't want to hear. It's all right there, and no one says a damn thing to them.
Yeah.
But it's just unbelievable how surrounded by sensitivity I'm dealing with these days. It's just, if we ever go to war, I feel bad.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, actually, to see people cry and piss and moan about things like this.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, John. I think it is. We have a whole generation of snowflakes who think it's okay to censor other people, not themselves, but other people. They don't seem to understand the slippery slope idea that once you start censoring somebody else, then you yourself can be censored. That doesn't seem to to really occur to anybody. I find that that lack of reasoning, of judgment, astonishing in this day and age. But that seems to be commonplace now, don't you think?
Yeah, and like it says, I've never, it's going back 20, 25 years, this wasn't even brought to the table with anybody. It's just something I'm really kind of still trying to understand why either it's half the country or something that's just fallen apart. And we've lost, like it says, even saying yesterday, we've lost a lot of unity in this country. And I don't understand why. I don't know what the end game is. I really don't. It's pretty sad to see, this generation God just laying down,
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I think there's a way out of it. Thank you for the call, John. I appreciate you taking the time and trouble. But I think indeed that the way back is to pay attention to things like censorship, to start becoming more aware of it, start fighting back when we think something is egregious. And some censorship can be taken as positive, like the yelling of you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. Censorship can be positive when it causes harm, when the thing that you're trying to censor causes harm to people. That's one thing. But who decides what causes harm? That's the problem. And in the UK, with this comedian who was arrested, they decided that just posting your opinion causes people harm. That to me is Orwellian. It's gone way too far. It's the age-old adage that the Supreme Court justices said when they decided which of the seven, which words were considered obscene and therefore should be censored by broadcast media. And it is, I don't know, I know it when I see it, is basically what the Supreme Court said when they said what is obscenity. And I think the same might be able to be said of other forms of censorship as well. I can tell you when something should not be allowed. For instance, when a comedian is arrested at the airport by armed police for posting anti-trans messages, that's censorship that shouldn't be allowed. Or it's also not acceptable when a sitting governor decides to try to ban parody videos that make fun of his dismal record. That should not be allowed. Newsom has, been told to keep his hands off of deep fake videos at this point, and he can't promote any more laws that do that. But where you have to look at it and say, well, where do you draw the line between what's allowed and what's not allowed? For instance, what is the difference between deep fake videos that are not allowed according to the court? I mean, that are allowed according to the court. You can certainly do though. That's humor. It's parody. It's allowable. And you don't need to put a disclaimer because according to the judge, that would ruin the joke. But what's the difference between deep fake videos and, say, fake news? What's the difference between those two things? And President Trump has railed against fake news, i.e. that's been put out by mainstream media like ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN. And most recently, he was given $16 million by CBS for his presidential library because of basically fake news censorship. What they did was they tampered with Kamala Harris's 60 Minutes interview. Because she was incoherent in the interview, what they did was they edited it. They did judicious editing to make her appear more coherent just before the election. And it was a clear case of election tampering by doing that and censorship. And so they cried uncle because they were caught out. And as a result, they settled with President Trump. He sued them, as I think he was right to, and they paid him $16 million in order to make it go away so that they wouldn't. It was going to cost them a hell of a lot more, and that payment was made directly to his presidential library. But the interesting thing is that they didn't learn anything from what they did, from what CBS did, because just this week they edited a statement by Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem out of nowhere. So they learned nothing. It looks like they learned nothing. And I played this for you early in the week, but I want you to hear what they did. This was censorship, what they did with it. This was the cut that they asked her a question about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man, the M13 gang member, the human trafficker, the guy who beats his wife, she had to get multiple TROs to protect herself against and temporary restraining orders. I mean, so that's who she was asked a question about him, and she answered it. But when they went back to air, this is all they aired. Cut number 1, please, Mike.
And the one thing that we will continue to do is to make sure that he doesn't walk free in the United States of America.
That's all they aired. That's it. Doesn't really tell you much, does it? Just, okay, he's a bad guy. All right. What she actually said was much more complete and really explained why he was such a bad guy. This is what she actually said and what was edited out of her response when it was aired. Cut 1A, please, Mike.
This individual was a known human smuggler, a MS-13 gang member, an individual who was a wife beater, and someone who was so perverted that he solicited nude photos from minors. And even his fellow human traffickers told him to knock it off. He was so sick in what he was doing and how he was treating small children. So he needs to never be in the United States of America, and our administration is making sure we're doing all that we can to bring him to justice.
Yeah. A little bit different, don't you think? I mean, wasn't there a lot of information in the second response that would have been good to know if you're trying to make up your mind about whether Kilmar Abrego Garcia is being railroaded or whether he's somebody that you hope never darkens the U.S. doorway again? I mean, isn't that really pivotal information that was edited out? And President Trump went on Truth Social after that happened and derided mainstream media for what, in his view, was biased coverage, and said he would be in favor of the Federal Communications Commission revoking their licenses, and said that the news outlets had given him negative coverage on 97% of the stories. And if that number is true, he said, and this, he wrote it just much like Gavin Newsom does in all caps, if that is the case, They are simply an arm of the Democrat Party and should, according to many, have their licenses revoked. And President Trump said he would be totally in favor of the move because, according to him, these outlets are so biased and untruthful, and they're an actual threat to our democracy. And then he followed up with another post attacking ABC, NBC as fake news, and the two of the absolute worst and most biased networks anywhere in the world. And he questioned why both aren't paying millions of dollars a year in license fees. So he's saying that they should be charged more, if anything else. He said they should lose their licenses for their unfair coverage of Republicans and or conservatives. But at a minimum, they should pay up big for having the privilege of using the most valuable airways anywhere at any time. Crooked journalism. And he said again, they should not be rewarded. Their license should be terminated. Now, what do you think? Is he right? Or is taking away their licenses censorship? Also, the question is, for me, was he trolling there? Was that a troll? Does he really mean to take away their licenses? Or is he just poking them because, of course, he's the king of all trolls and he can do that when he wants to? Because everybody pays attention when the president of the United States speaks. That's a big deal, taking away somebody's licenses. Have those networks, have they been censoring conservatives and MAGA and Trump? I think it's fair to say they have. And in the guise of fake news, putting out stories that have no basis, stopping stories that are positive, that's all censorship without a doubt. Should they lose their license over that? Or is that overkill? Is that slippery slope we don't want to get on? Let's go to John in Westford. John, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you. I think there's a soft censorship that's going on, and we're all allowing it to happen to ourselves with our algorithms that we choose. And if you go on the internet, it's for example, Israel. Some people, once you start clicking on something that's, I don't want to say anti-Semitic, but anti-Israel, you just keep getting fed the same thing over and over again. The I don't know what they call Gen Z, right now, their algorithm is extremely pessimistic. And they even have a meme, nothing ever happens. Meaning politically, nobody's ever going to go to jail, nothing's ever getting done. Whereas I'm telling my son, no, Trump, RFK, they're hitting it out of the park. It's just that we're being fed two different streams. And nobody ever bothers to look outside of their own algorithm.
Well, I like your term soft censorship a lot. I think that's very appropriate. But what do you do about that? Because is that something that you have to self-police on, or is this something that you think needs some kind of official intervention?
Self-police and be made aware of it. Like I've listened to a lot of podcasts. If something's happened in Israel, I'll listen to Ben Shapiro, but then at the same time I'll listen to a podcast from George Galloway from Britain, who's a little more pro-Palestinian. Still not left-wing kooky, but and the same thing with talk shows. At noontime, if I'm in the car, I'll actually listen to Boston Public Radio.
I'm sorry, John, you're breaking up. Can you repeat that? In the noontime, you said in noontime you were breaking up. In noontime, you said you listened to. I couldn't hear the rest of it.
Oh, like Boston Public Radio.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's painful.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're losing you. You're breaking up, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I really do like soft censorship, but I don't think fake news is soft censorship. I think fake news is out and out in your face censorship. And I don't like these networks either. And they have a lot to answer for, but pulling their license, I think that's a bit draconian. And I think that if you start pulling the license for broadcasts you don't like, then when the powers that be change hands, then the problem is, then you lose your license. I think you have to, and again, you have to tolerate things you don't like. But I do think President Trump was right to sue CBS for election interfering. But again, that was for election interfering is what the charge he brought against them. So, I mean, there was a specific point to that. It wasn't just, I didn't like what you did. What they did specifically had an effect, or was intended to have an effect on the election. And that's why they settled. If it hadn't been Kamala Harris, if it had been somebody else, and if it hadn't been just before the election, I am not sure that would have settled the way it did. And so, censorship is fake news in regard to censorship is very difficult. I'm not sure what the answer is in regard to fake news. The marketplace does take care of those networks that engage in fake news. They lose their credibility. Look at what happened to CNN and MS Now. It's called. It was MSNBC, but now it's MS Now. And I think their rebranding effort is going to fail as well. The marketplace kills their credibility. Advertisers flee. They can't afford their people anymore, and they dissolve or try to rebrand or get sold and try to mend their ways. CNN has made an effort, not a huge effort. CNN has made an effort to be more fair in some instances, not all. They're still pretty left wing. And then over at MSNBC, Joe Scarborough, who, before a few months ago would have rather stick hot needles in his eyes and say anything positive about Trump, has moved very much to the center, more so than he ever was before. And I think for the basic reason he wants to keep his job. And he realizes that the partisan censorship that he was doing before was no longer acceptable. So I think the marketplace takes care of a lot of things that don't need active regulation. So that's one way of dealing with it. But what about offensive speech? Is that protected? Former VP candidate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, stepped into an area where I would call this offensive speech just this past week. I don't know if you were aware of it. We talked a little bit about this on Tuesday. There were wild conspiracy theories exploding everywhere across social media over the long weekend, claiming that President Donald Trump was either dead or on his deathbed. And it started, the frenzy started when President Trump took, a couple days off from the spotlight because he'd been working so hard. And next thing you know, there are hashtags like Trump is dead or where is Trump? And they all were rocketing to the top of top of X. And let's face it, they were fueled by very morbid fantasies from Trump deranged activists. You had Governor Pritzker getting into the act. You had, all sorts of people weighing in. But thankfully, all these sick, twisted postings and rumors were utterly demolished when President Trump showed up at the golf course playing golf, in Virginia. And it was like, oh, okay, he's fine. But on Labor Day, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was speaking at an annual picnic in Duluth, Minnesota, which was an organized labor picnic. But he set the internet going again by issuing a comment on those crazy rumors. He was basically gloating. It was very distasteful, and told the audience to remain hopeful, essentially, that President Trump would soon die and their dreams would be fulfilled. I kid you not. Cut 59, please, Mike.
You get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
Wow. X users were furious after hearing him saying those nasty words, and suggest that he was hopeful that the world would soon be without President Trump. That was vile. It was a vile thing to say. But was it protected? Did he have the right to say it? Like I said, it's disgusting, but just because something is disgusting, should it be censored? Steve in Walpole, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Steve?
Doing well, Sandy. Thanks for doing a great job covering for Jeff. Hoping to hear back from him soon.
Monday, fingers crossed.
Fantastic. The comment that the president made, and has been followed up on this program, about networks and broadcasting, networks do not require a license to operate any more than what you're doing. Do you need a license to operate, or does the station broadcast your signal?
Oh no, it's the station. It's the station's license, but I am the person who has to abide by the rules set out, or I'm fired by the station, because I am the guardian of their license while I'm on the air.
I understand that, but going to ABC and saying I'm pulling your license, well, ABC may own WABC, but other than that, it was a generic comment, and he's not getting into the weeds, which is why I'm thinking it was a troll. He's just poking them, I think. But it made me think, do you want to be interfering on a business level? Because if you're going to pull licenses, okay, you go, you check out all their affiliates and you pull them because they aired it. Just like I'll give you an example, Steve. If I am a show that is on multiple stations across whatever network it is, whether it's a regional or national network, and I am an independent broadcaster, but all of these stations carry my show, which is what ABC does with their news programming. And I say I swear a blue streak on the air, or allow somebody to do that on the air. I personally don't get fined for what I did, nor does the person who say it. But every single affiliate who aired it gets fined. So if it's on 10 stations, 10 people get that $200,000 fine. If it's on 2 stations get it. So it is my job, if I want to stay on those stations, not to cost them money. That's basically how that works. But I would agree that a network has the right to say something is stupid, foolish, and occasionally even false.
Yeah, so this is the question. So they have a right to do it. So you're saying you believe in self-policing and marketplace policing as opposed to censorship?
Possibly with the exception of those 7 words.
Yeah, which is, that seems to be a universal line which nobody really wants to cross. Although if you're on a cable, not broadcast, you can do whatever you want. You can say those 7 words. It's just broadcast that you can't say it. 617-266-6868. Censorship. Is it ever acceptable? Should fake news be censored? And what about actions as opposed to speech? We've talked about flag burning. Some feel very strongly that should be censored, like President Trump. He's signed a law to that effect, or an executive order to make it a jailable offense. But what about actions not involving the flag? I want you to look at the case of Elizabeth Baxter. She's a paralegal at the Department of Justice. She was just fired by Attorney General Pam Bondi after multiple incidents of inappropriate conduct toward National Guard service members that have been stationed in D.C. during President Trump's crime crackdown. And Pam Bondi has said that she's removed Elizabeth Baxter, the paralegal. She's a paralegal specialist in the DOJ's Environment and Natural Resources Division. But Pam Bondi said she removed Elizabeth Baxter after an internal investigation into repeated actions directed at National Guard personnel. According to the AG, Baxter first admitted in the middle of August to a DOJ security guard that she had made an obscene gesture toward a National Guard member at the Metro Center station and verbally insulted him. That same day, surveillance footage showed Baxter making the gesture again. You can imagine what gesture it is, outside the DOJ's Forcon building and shouting profanities at a guardsman. A week later, she did the same thing, made the same remarks to a DOJ security guard while entering the building, and witness statements and security video were looked at in regard to the investigation. And after the investigation, Bondi filed a report saying that Baxter was removed from the position of paralegal specialist, et cetera, and from the federal service effective immediately, citing inappropriate conduct towards National Guard service members. And she's got a right of appeal that lasts for 30 days. Bondi confirmed that firing in a social media post. And she said, "Today I took action to terminate a DOJ employee for inappropriate conduct towards National Guard service members in D.C. at the Justice Department, and remains committed to defending President Trump's agenda and fighting to make America safe again. If you oppose our mission and disrespect law enforcement, you will no longer work at the DOJ." Did Bondi do the right thing? Or was Elizabeth Baxter just exercising free speech? Was what she did and say protected by the First Amendment? Is she being censored in firing her? You know, there was another case just a few weeks ago at the DOJ. It's a little bit different. You had another DOJ employee, Sean Charles Dunn. He was accused of throwing a sandwich at a National Guard, a federal officer, and shouting insults at law enforcement at the same time. And he also was a paralegal. He was in the DOJ's criminal division. And he has been charged with misdemeanor assault after a grand jury declined to indict him on felony counts. But was what he did free speech? I think his case is different. It's assault and battery when you throw something at somebody, even if it's just a sandwich. And assault is not a constitutional freedom. But, you know, flipping someone the bird is not a form of speech. It's offensive, but does that mean that it should be censored and you're paying a price there? You're losing your job. Or does the job change your rights? The fact that she works for the DOJ, is she held to a higher standard? Do you lose some of your free speech rights if you work for the DOJ or the White House or someplace else that's on the public payroll and in high visibility? It's an interesting question, because I think that the guy who threw the sandwich at the National Guard, that's assault and battery. That's not protected under any stretch of the imagination, I don't think. But I'm thinking what Baxter did, well, I find it distasteful. And I think she's a little unhinged there by running around flipping the bird to National Guardsmen and insulting them when they're just doing their duty. I think that's different. I think there is an issue there in regard to free speech. I'm not sure, and I think maybe you holler in and you say, "You don't do that. It's a bad look for the DOJ," but you don't necessarily fire her out of the box, do you? I mean, she has a right to do that. She does not have. I will make it clear, she does not have a right to work for the DOJ. But I think she has the right to say what she did, and she also has a right to some kind of appeal, which she does for 30 days. But I think they needed to suspend her or tell her, if you do this again, we're telling you now it's a bad look for us. We don't want it. We're going to fire you. I think they were a little quick to pull the trigger there. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think that Pam Bondi was within her rights to fire Ms. Baxter? Let's go to Ann in Cambridge. Ann, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. It's my first time calling.
Oh, well, welcome.
So you've done a great job this week.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I think Pam was well within her rights.
Okay.
Because this woman, she's her boss, and you have to act like your job description. She didn't throw her in jail, so she didn't take away her First Amendment rights. She has the right to do it, but she doesn't have the right to work for her and get away with what she wants to.
Don't you think that maybe saying "don't do this again" might have been a little less draconian, or was Pam Bondi trying to prove a point that has nothing really to do with Miss Baxter?
From what you said, and I wasn't aware of this, she did it 3 different times.
Yeah.
So how many times? You're a grown up. You know that you're
she's
crossing
unhinged.
the line.
Yeah, she's a nut. Without a doubt, she's a nut. And, I don't think taxpayer dollars should go to be paying a nut salary, but I agree that she's a nut. But if they spoke to her after each time, I think, she's out of here. But if they didn't know she was doing it till the 3rd time and then told her don't do it, would that have been a better response?
It's debatable.
Yeah. It's a fine line, isn't it? Censorship is not an easy question. It can be a very difficult question. Censorship, is it ever okay? Have you ever been censored? Censorship does not just invoke or does not just attach when you're talking about social media posts or TV editing. It can also happen with actions and gestures, like the case of Elizabeth Baxter, a DOJ paralegal who Attorney General Pam Bondi fired for flipping off and verbally insulting National Guard that were stationed in D.C. during President Trump's crime jihad. She did this 3 times. Was Bondi right to fire her, or is this censorship? Or is it censorship, but that's okay because some censorship is allowed? What do you think, Arthur in Chestnut Hill? Should Bondi have fired Ms. Baxter?
Well, I'll tell you, Sandy, and you're doing a great job. I hope Jeff gets better soon. She should have fired him. She should have fired her the first time, and twice on Sunday. You can't have people like that working for you. What kind of an example does it set for everybody else that works in the department? So that if you don't fire that person, the next one that does that, it's okay. And the guy who assaulted the guard with a sandwich. Yeah, he's lucky he didn't get him in the eye or something. Or sometimes freak things like that can cause bad problems, and people like that make me sick because what's going on here is a lack of respect for decent people, for people doing their job, and the only reason they're there is to protect the people. Yeah. To do them a favor. Yeah. And instead, this is what they get. It's like the Vietnam guys that came home from the war were called baby killers. Yeah. And they were nothing but, and they did what they were told to do. And it's a disgrace. We don't respect anything that what this country used to be all about. We don't respect children. We don't respect others. We don't respect veterans. And we don't respect authority. And you know what? This is the greatest cabinet I have ever seen. And compared to the last cabinet of the most dysfunctional people I've ever seen in my life, we're far advanced. And it sickens to me what goes on in this country today. And respect is something that doesn't exist anymore. And the word pride has been taken away from the people that belong to, like the Marines. And when you did something that you were proud to do, that word has been taken away from us. Things that were really decent in this country, they're gone. And you know what? We're paying a price for it. And the most important thing, and I say this time and time again, and I hope I'm wandering on, if we don't get rid of this media, then they have more blood on their hands. And I just can't stand to watch what they do day after day after day. It's great for people like you and Jeff who give us an opportunity to vent and to also tell the truth about things. I wish it could get a little further so that more people in this country would understand what the truth is and how they're being played. But I just wish there was respect again in this country. And I wish, you know what? To be honest with you, for the first time in my life, and it's been a long life, I never thought I'd see what's going on today. I'm not proud of my country.
I think you put your finger on it, Arthur, in regard to lack of respect. There's a texter who agrees with you. I just wanted to read it to you. The text line is 70470. 781 says, Sandy, I think everyone that works in the government is and should be held to a higher standard. Government is supposed to set and lead by example. Clearly that hasn't been happening because we often say no one is above the law in regards to government employees or elected officials. But here's my question for you, Arthur, and for the texter. I completely understand what you're saying. You want to hold them to a higher standard, and it's one of the ways that we can bring back that level of respect that you're talking about. But should somebody, just because they work for the government, should they have, even while you're saying that they have more responsibility, should that also mean, because this is going to go hand in hand with that, does that also mean that they have fewer rights? Because doesn't she have a right to vent her political beliefs by doing something as obnoxious and offensive as flipping off the National Guard? I agree that it's a horrible thing that she did. But she has the right to do it. Isn't the fact that she loses her job over that censorship? Does that mean she has fewer rights because she has a job in the government? Arthur?
Well, you know what? We could use a lot of censorship today. Video games and gangster rap and certain stuff that causes a lot of violence and influences a lot of things in a negative way. I remember the littlest things that were censored way back when, and we thought it was really bad. But what's going on today? But we had role models, okay, and it was important as growing up. Your parents were a role model. Your teacher was a role model. People that you saw in video and sports, everybody was concerned with good behavior because they always said, you got to do this right because, a lot of people, are watching what you're doing, and everybody gets influenced easily. And everything we do today and everything that gets reported, it causes another person to do it if it's negative. And there's too many negatives being reported that's why we have these things repeated over and over again. And one of the biggest examples, and one of the most, when I saw this happen, it was just so awful to me, because if you can't be an 8-year-old and be safe in a Catholic school, that's really something. Yeah. And this trans person, the media and everybody, trans this, trans that, that's fine, we're proud that we support trans, and I'm going to put trans people here and there. But unfortunately, a lot of trans people have murdered children in schools because what's happened is what they thought was a good thing turned out to be a bad thing, and and they couldn't live with it anymore, and they decided to take other people with them, and the other people, unfortunately, were children.
Yeah.
Everything that we tolerate today has given us bad results.
Well, I wouldn't say everything, Arthur. I understand why you're saying that, but not everything. And I would say to you that I don't think that because people are overly influenced, I think that's the result of everybody having a cell phone and the ability to post on the internet. I don't think the answer to that is censorship, because who decides where the line is drawn? Today it's here, tomorrow it's there, the next day it's over here. One day you're on one side of it, the next day you're on the other side of it. You can't have a fluid line like that, or nobody has freedom of speech anymore, ever. And that is what happens. And you see that in that first case I was talking about in the United Kingdom, where a comedian is arrested by armed police at the airport because he made social media posts that people thought were obnoxious. That's what happened. And who's to decide what obnoxious is? This week, he gets arrested. Next week, it's you that gets arrested, Arthur. So you have to be very careful about just saying, yes, we need censorship. I think there are instances when censorship is appropriate. I think they're far and few between. And I don't think you want government deciding what humor is. And I don't think you want, that's a form of censorship. And that's what they were doing in the United Kingdom. And I think one of the earlier callers made a very good point. What happened in the UK is what's going to happen here next week, because they have turned out to be kind of like the testing grounds for a lot of cancel culture and socialist policies in the past 10, 15 years. And so I think when you see such draconian responses to social media posts there, I think you're about to see them here, unless you start drawing the line and saying censorship is not appropriate whenever you don't like something. And that's kind of what you just said, Arthur. You don't like this, so it should be censored. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that you have to find other ways to deal with, horrific misinformation that goes around. I think that censorship is not the way to do that, because don't forget, during COVID, look at the doctors who were censored, and they had information in regard to how to treat COVID, but it didn't work with what Big Pharma wanted, and they were supporting the Biden administration. So the Biden administration got aboard and censored doctors because they didn't want that information out. That's where censorship can lead, and we were not the better for that. So I think you got to be very careful, even though you have a level of frustration and heartbreak over some of the things that you see misinformation doing, I think you have to be very careful how you apply censorship. Doesn't mean it's never good, but I don't think it's as useful as people think it is. Censorship. Is it ever okay? Are there times when it's appropriate to censor? We're talking about a paralegal at the Department of Justice who was fired because she repeatedly flipped off and insulted National Guard stationed in D.C. And Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's the one who fired her, posted about it on X. I'm going to read that again. She said, "Today, I took action to terminate a DOJ employee for inappropriate conduct towards National Guard service members in D.C. The Justice Department remains committed to defending President Trump's agenda and fighting to make America safe again. If you oppose our mission and disrespect law enforcement, you will no longer work at the DOJ." And she doesn't. She was fired. She's got 30 days to appeal. Was Pam Bondi right to fire her? Did this woman have the right to flip off guard if she wants to? I mean, I don't agree with what she did. I find it pretty disgusting, to be honest with you. But doesn't she have a right to do it? The text line is 70470. 781 says she doesn't lose her rights, but if working for the DOJ, there's probably something she signed saying she would behave in a way to reflect ill repute on the department. Yes, she probably did, as a matter of fact. I think that's probably true that she did. So that's a good point, and that would obviously trigger her dismissal, and she's got a right of appeal, which means she probably did. She's part of the government employees union, is what I would take that as. Let's see. 978 says, "Sandy, freedom of speech is protected, but there are codes of conduct. I can't walk into work and flip off the receptionist and berate her every day just because I don't like her because she doesn't have my political views. I would be fired immediately." Yeah, you probably would. And there'd be hostile work environment issues and all the rest. But we're not talking about her flipping off somebody in her office. She was flipping off National Guard stationed at Union Station and around the city, and she was caught doing it. And they didn't know she did it the first couple of times, but she was admitting that she did it. She was proud of it, I guess. She's not exactly the brightest bulb I've ever seen running around in the Justice Department, given the fact that she's admitted she was bragging about doing it, and there's video of her doing it. So she was looking for trouble, and she found it. I don't think she expected to get fired. Should she have been fired? Is that a right? Is this one of those moments when censorship is appropriate? Because that's what this was. It was, in fact, censorship. Let's go to Mark in Lowell. Welcome to WRKO. How are you, Mark?
It's going good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Was Pam Bondi right in firing this paralegal?
Yes, of course. And more than likely, she even had to raise her hand to swear to the United States Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
But, neither here nor there. What I want to say in general about censorship is even the lowest class of people, like, let's say, murderers, are being censored for murdering because they like doing it. So we have censorship everywhere, and we have to just decide what is good.
Well, I think there's a difference between, don't you think, between censorship and other actions. For instance, the guy who threw the sandwich at the National Guard, at the federal officer, he's being brought up on assault. I don't view that as censorship. That was assault. Censorship usually involves things that don't actually impact other people, either physically or otherwise. It may hurt their feelings, but it doesn't involve an assault and battery or an injury of some way. It's purely demonstrative. So you don't see a line there?
I see a line everywhere. I also believe in no flag burning.
Mm-hmm.
But what I see is that everyone's forgotten what it takes to be a citizen of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
All us people born in the USA and parents of U.S. citizens, we all don't know what the oath is. except if you go into the military, you get refreshed at that time of what the oath to the United States is. And last week sometime, you had someone talk about the word allegiance. Allegiance is a highly prestigious word.
Yeah.
It might mean something different today, but, it's still, that's another form of censorship to me.
How is that a form of censorship?
Because it's being taken the way people want it to mean today versus what it meant the day it was put into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused. I don't really understand what that has to do with censorship.
Well, censorship is putting, as you said, is basically putting boundaries on what we as people are allowed to do and not to do. And speech is one of them.
Yeah.
And basically, I'll go to another area. Let's take the N word. That word is being censored right now because one group is allowed to say it whenever they want to, and another group isn't.
That's a really good example.
And I'm saying the same thing about U.S., Pledge of Allegiance. I'm saying the same thing about...
Well, I don't see... that's where you're losing me. I don't understand why the Pledge of Allegiance is the equivalent of the N-word.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that it is. There's a ton of people. It's every single instance in the world of censorship is different.
Yeah.
Right now, we have censorship. Is it a censorship of firing someone for behaving improperly at their job or going home from their job or whatever? Is that considered censorship or not? That's one question you asked.
Yep.
And
I guess my confusion is I don't understand what your point was about allegiance and the Pledge of Allegiance and how that was censorship.
Well, because the word allegiance is being picked out of the phrase, just like the word God was back in the 60s.
Ah, I see. Okay.
And saying that it's...
So censoring, you're saying they literally censoring the word allegiance out of what you would do with the flag. When we were growing up, it was the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and you're saying they find the word allegiance has a pejorative connotation to it, so they're leaving out the word allegiance. So that's being censored.
In the day, they did the word God. Censorship is being used for. It's some places they're being smart about it, and they're doing little pieces at a time.
Yeah.
Taking it away.
Yeah.
And
it's insidious. It's insidious what they're doing. That type of censorship is horrific to me because people, it's like a lobster turning the heat up on a boiling lobster. It doesn't know it's boiling, until it's dead because it doesn't feel the water rise or the water heat up. And it's the same thing here. People don't realize they're being censored until all of a sudden you're arrested at the airport with armed guards. So I understand exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you. Thank you so much for the call, Mark. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, there's some censorship that is really insidious. You don't even know. It's just the little things here and there, I think, which is one of the points that Mark was making. You have, we'll take this word out here, that word out there, and then before you know it, you can't say anything. I think, that's the long-range strategic censorship that occurs. But then we also have the in-your-face censorship that happened, for instance, during the election, the 2020 election, where anybody who brought up the laptop, Hunter Biden's laptop, was cut dead in their tracks. And so much so that, do you remember, the New York Post found the guy who had the laptop and did this story, and they were censored. They couldn't go on social media. And Senator Ted Cruz brought up the story. He was censored. He couldn't go on social media because it did not fit the narrative that was fake news, that was that was Russian interference. And so therefore they were all censored. That was in your face censorship. But the stuff that Mark is talking about is the stuff that, you don't use this word. Don't use that word. Just a word, that word is a little offensive. We saw it to the nth degree, what he's talking about in the last administration with things like they wanted to change the word mother to birthing person. I mean, that's the change of a word. It was ludicrous. We all agree it was ludicrous, but that's, where one word is changed. And now all of a sudden we're moving into a whole different environment where, women are not easily identifiable. People don't know what a definition of a woman is. I mean, that's where that leads to. And it's frightening to me, that level of censorship. Let's go to David in Ashland. David, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Have you ever been censored, David?
No, I never have.
Lucky guy. Do you think that Pam Bondi was right to fire this paralegal at the DOJ?
Yes, I think that any company that you work for, whether it's federal government, whatever, I think that, they do have, policies and whatever. And I think that if the person overstepped the line, like I know I worked in the medical field, mm-hmm. and we have something in there written that you cannot talk to, like, the media. If something happens, you can't talk to anyone, and you have to be careful with your patients, with HIPAA. So I mean, a lot of that is there in the system, built into the system. I think all corporations have that. Probably a lot of people don't, look at it, but I think the individual, I'm sure there was something that was written up that they, their behavior, for working for a federal government, that means that inside and outside when you're walking around.
Well, David, but doesn't it make a difference that, one, she wasn't talking to the press. She wasn't doing something in regard to any kind of public statement representing the DOJ. Nobody on the street would know that she works at the DOJ. And she wasn't in her workplace. She's walking home or doing her grocery shopping, whatever, and chose to be abusive to National Guard, which I find appalling. But is that a fireable offense when she wasn't in her job and not identifiable as a DOJ employee?
It is. I think that her behavior on the outside mm-hmm. is kind of an indicator of what kind of place that she works for.
How?
So, I mean,
how is that true?
Well, it would be like you, Sandy. If you work for a media corporation, what if you mm-hmm. went outside and you were acting out and doing bizarre things and swearing?
But nobody knows what I look like. Nobody knows that that's me. Nobody knows who I work for. If I'm at the grocery store and have a hissy fit for whatever reason, God forbid that I ever do something like that, and decide to make a public scene, there's no way anybody would know that I work for iHeart. I don't wear an iHeart badge around my neck. No, I'm not recognizable. My voice may be recognizable, but my face certainly isn't. And she was not a public figure. She wasn't doing stuff for press for the DOJ. She's a paralegal who works in a back office on environmental issues. And the only reason why they know she did this was because she's stupid. She basically, bragged about doing it to a security guard who was like, oh my God. And so then, and not only once, but multiple times bragged about doing it. So now they can go and look at the CCTV cameras, and now they can ask people, the guards, in question, did this happen? And yes, it did. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And they have a body of evidence to say, what the hell's wrong with you? But she wasn't identifiable as a DOJ employee. She's not talking to the press, and she certainly has nothing. And she's not a public member of the DOJ, so nobody knows who she works for. So, given all of that, is it right that she lose her job for what she did? Is that censorship of her freedom of speech and freedom of action?
Well, I think. I mean, nowadays we don't have any privacy. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone's got their phones out. Everyone's pointing, and people like that guy that was at the concert.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing is safe anymore. So it means that individuals that go and act out like that,
Yeah, but he was the head of a CEO. He was the public face of a company, and he embarrassed himself. He didn't, he did what he did in public, got caught at it, and he was the public face of that. Everybody knew who he was. He was identifiable. She wasn't identifiable. Nobody knew who she was.
Things happened. I think
that was one of the funnier stories, I have to say, David. I mean, honest to God, it's, and he was furious at everybody around him. And I wouldn't want him as my CEO either. But he, yes, I see I see where, you're talking about people behaving stupidly and paying the cost, which I agree with. But the difference between them is he resigned. He wasn't fired. He resigned, one, and two, he was the public face of that company. People knew who he was immediately when they saw him. You saw her picture in a video or on the, you would have no idea who she was or who she worked for. So I think that maybe, that has something to do with, well, I guess my question is, does that have something to do with censorship? I mean, in regard to her, does she have more rights, basically, because she's unidentifiable? Is she being held to a higher standard there because she works for the DOJ? And did she lose her rights by agreeing to work for the DOJ because they're now holding her accountable for something that, to be honest with you, I think she's a piece of, what? I don't like her at all, and I would not hire her. And I'm pretty sure that she's going to find it difficult to get another job unless, some liberal think tank thinks she should get kudos for flipping off the National Guard. But as long as she's not identifiable with my department, as long as nobody knows who she is, I don't see that I have a right to tell her what she can do or say. I can tell her I think it's reprehensible, and and she's not going to get promoted. But does she get suspended as opposed to fired? Maybe.
I think that it doesn't really matter. I mean, if she was my employee and I found out that she did that, I wouldn't want her working for me. Because I want people that represent, especially in the federal government, I want someone that's going to represent my values.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with, if I were hiring people and I could identify her as the person that did that, I would not be hiring her without a doubt. But I think once she's got the job and she's in there, and I think you have to give her more. And if they spoke to her after each time she did it and said, "Don't do that, please," and she still did it, then you have an issue on your hand. But I don't think they knew until after the fact. And I think just firing her might be an issue. I'm not sure they did the right thing. And I appreciate the fact you're trying to convince me that she did it. And I would like other people to convince me that Pam Bondi did the right thing. Thank you for the call, David. I appreciate it very much. We're going to get right back to the calls, but before we do, I overshot and I criticized Jeff for doing this all the time, and so nobody can tell him that I did it. That we were supposed to do Cooner's call log at 8 a.m. and I let it go by a few minutes. So we're going to stop right for just a couple minutes, and we're going to do Cooner's call log, where we highlight a call from the week that stood out. Doesn't have to be the best or the funniest or the worst or the saddest or whatever. It's just something that really stood out. And Mike is the arbiter of who the caller of the week is. Take it away, Mike.
It's time for Cooner's Call Log, where we showcase our favorite caller from the week.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
If you ask the people of the west side and south side of Chicago, they're begging for Trump to come in. They're going to the city council meetings, arguing with Johnson, pleading with him. He's just so stubborn, and his ego is more important than the people of Chicago. That's the sad thing. We moved here 7 years ago. We kept our house in Chicago because the plan was we were going to move back. I'm born and raised in Chicago. I love my city. And because of the crime and the way things have changed and escalated, we sold the house in Chicago. I was going out there last year, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, by the way, we were told if you want to get gas in Chicago, do it before 6 p.m. because there's been a lot of carjackings." And I don't live on the west side of Chicago. So, things have drastically changed. Something needs to be done. This is ridiculous. You're offered help. Take it. I think the people want that, especially the people on the west side and south side where most of these crimes are committed. They want it. They can't live like this any longer.
And next week, it could be you on Cooner's Call Log.
Please, don't be a stranger. Call again.
Yeah, that was an eye-opening call. That was one of our calls. We're talking about President Trump invading Chicago, and that's one former Chicagoan who said, yes, please, who had to sell her house because she can't go back there. I've been to Chicago. I love Chicago. I did love Chicago. You couldn't pay me to go there right now. Not even a little bit. Thanks, Mike. That was a very nicely done job. Gone are the days of Frank Sinatra in Chicago, right? It's a little bit different now. 617-266-6868 is the number here. 617-266-6868. The text number is 70470. We're talking about the case of Elizabeth Baxter, the paralegal at the DOJ who was fired for flipping off National Guard and for swearing at them. And we have I'm saying, is this censorship? Doesn't she have a right to do what she wants to do on the street? She's not identifiable as a DOJ employee, and they didn't know she did it the first few times. And when they found out, they said, no, you're out of here. You're fired. And Pam Bondi fired her. Is that censorship? Did she have freedom of expression that she should be able to follow? Or agreed, everybody can agree that it was reprehensible actions, but doesn't she have a right to do it, even if you dislike it, even if you dislike it intensely? And I have two differing points of view of that on the text number, on the text line. On, let's see, 978 says, Sandy, you should be able to do as you wish on your own time unless you hurt the company, or in this case, the Department of Justice. That's kind of how I feel about it. But then 603 says, Sandy, code of ethics and morals apply. Most importantly, it is harassment and discrimination with proof. You're fired. It's not censorship. Yeah. So there's another viewpoint heard from. So it's really going right down the line here as to whether Elizabeth Baxter should have been fired or not. And I want to know which side you were on. Let's go with Jan in New Hampshire. Jan, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
So I think she should be fired for sexual harassment.
Fired for sexual harassment. Why? How does sexual harassment come into this?
Well, because if the gesture is what I think it is.
She was flipping on the bird. The one-fingered salute is another way to put it. Hang on, Jan. Don't hang up. Hang on the line. We're talking about censorship and the case of Elizabeth Baxter, the DOJ paralegal who was fired by Pam Bondi for flipping the bird to National Guard and insulting them. And my question is, she didn't do it at work. She did it outside on the street. She was not identifiable as a DOJ employee. While you might find what she did disgusting, which I do, is that a fireable offense? Is she being censored? Is she losing her First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and action? And we were speaking with Jan from New Hampshire just before the break. Jan, I'm sorry we got cut off. And you were saying you think that it's a case of sexual harassment?
Yes.
Okay, explain, please.
Because I've seen it happen. I mean, it's vice versa, but I've seen it happen for a guy doing it to a girl.
So if you're saying if Miss Baxter was a guy and flipping off a woman, it's sexual harassment. I don't understand how sexual harassment comes into this.
What?
You're not explaining it. You just keep repeating it. You're not actually explaining why it's sexual harassment.
Well, we know what it means, right?
Yeah.
F-U. Well, maybe she wants to get it on with him.
Yeah, no.
That's how I
think, well, okay. But if in fact she's flipping him off and insulting him simultaneously, which is what she was doing, then I think you can safely assume it's not sexual harassment. And by the way, it's not her workplace. So she can hit on anybody she wants to be honest with you. That's not sexual harassment. It's sexual harassment if you keep it up and don't walk away. But she just flipped in the bird, insulted him, and walked away. I find it disgusting, but I don't think she's hitting on him.
But I thought she did it in her workplace also.
No. She did it outside the she's on the street. She's in public places when she did it. Which is why there's video of it, because they have outside cameras in all these buildings in downtown DC. And to be really honest, Jan, she's stupid. I mean, she's really stupid. Not only is she doing that, which is just a jackass move to begin with for people who are just doing their job. It have nothing to do with policy. One and two, she's bragging about it to the security guards in her workplace. And so her security guards she's telling them what she's done. And they're the ones who told Bondi what she's done. And so then the DOJ, which of course is an arm of the law, has people who can investigate things, and they have the ability to pull tapes from where the security guards say this happened. And they were able to get, physical evidence that she did it. There's no doubt that she did it. That's not an issue. The issue is, should she be punished for doing it?
So then it goes down to a code of conduct.
Yeah.
And so everybody knows she works for the DOJ now. Everybody knows.
They do now. Yeah.
So she represents the DOJ.
Yeah.
So she represents the DOJ, and what she did was wrong.
Well, everybody knows, Jan, that she works for the DOJ now. They didn't know when she was doing it. When she was doing it, they had no idea who she was. She's a paralegal in the back room of the environmental section of the DOJ. Nobody knew who she was. She's not a public figure.
I guess it would go back to who witnessed it and who, knew that she was or wasn't.
Nobody knew.
Could have been people around.
Nobody knew.
You don't know that.
I do know that. I do know that. Nobody knew who she was. The only reason why she got her butt pulled in was because she bragged about it to the security guards, who were infuriated, rightly so. I completely understand their fury, and ratted her out. Ratted is probably the wrong term because that's pejorative. Told Pam Bondi what she had done, and because she didn't just do it once, she did it multiple times, and each time she bragged about it, and so they were able to get physical evidence that she had done it. But when she did it, she was not representing the DOJ. She's not a publicly known person. Nobody knew who she was or where she worked or any of the above. She was just a real bleep hole for going out there, and I mean that's what she was. But she was nobody had any connection with her in the DOJ. So should the DOJ be able to fire her for that? Especially since, they didn't give her any kind of warning. They just said, yeah, you're out. As opposed to, saying we're going to suspend you if you do it again. Stop it. They didn't give her a chance to correct her behavior. I'm not sure that she deserved one. Maybe that's one of the questions. Did she deserve a chance to correct her behavior? Did she deserve a stern talking to first before they fired her, or is going right to firing the appropriate thing to do? What do you think?
But she's bragging about it is another thing.
Yeah.
Bragging to whoever she was bragging to.
Yeah.
Making it known. She made it known.
She did.
She made it known.
Which is why she's stupid.
A representative of the DOJ going around flipping off whoever.
Yep.
She made it known.
Yep, she did.
So she's the one that's the one that sold herself out.
She
and
did.
Maybe, but I mean, if she signs a document, now I don't know what kind of document they sign, but if she signs a document saying that she's going to be, a decent person, then she should be fired. If not, corrective action.
Okay.
The least.
Okay. Absolutely. That's and I am finding that this is a 50-50 proposition, especially with people on the text lines and people responding. I think most people find her conduct reprehensible, but half people say, you can't fire somebody for doing something outside their job that has nothing to do with their job. And, unless it's breaking the law, which she was not breaking the law. So she was just being, a jackass. But half the people agree with you and half don't. It's a very interesting question. Thank you for the call, Jan. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I don't think anybody has thinks that what she did was a good thing. I mean, it was rude, it was disrespectful, and it was stupid. I mean, she's not exactly a rocket scientist. I think we can all agree that maybe the DOJ is better off and could maybe find somebody who's has a little more in the intellect department to help and to give them an assist on the environmental affairs branch of the DOJ. But still, is this censorship? This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Cooner. We're talking about censorship and in particular the case of Elizabeth Baxter, the paralegal who was fired from the DOJ for flipping the bird to some National Guard members just doing their job, and she also insulted them verbally at the same time, and not at the DOJ, but on the street. But Pam Bondi, as the AG, said, yeah, we don't want you here, and she fired her after it was discovered she had done that. And the only reason why we know that she did that is because she bragged about it to the wrong people. And my question is, she's a jackass of world-class proportions. I wouldn't want her working for me, but did they do the right thing in firing her? Doesn't she have the right to be a jackass if that's what she wants to be? The text line is 70470. 617 says, unfortunately, the National Guard member would have been disciplined if he retaliated and called her an idiot. Yes, he would have been. But you know what? And that's just so patently unfair. But at the same time, the other thing that I would say to you about that is that he's in uniform. She is not. So you know who he works for. You did not know who she works for. Nobody knows who she worked for. She was just a stupid, offensive woman on the street. And don't even stupid, offensive people have First Amendment rights to free speech? I think they do. Another 617 says, Sandy, Pam Bondi did the right thing. We all have a code of conduct from their employer. Example, if I worked at iHeart, sorry, the text thing is just going fast and furious, so it just whips right through, so sometimes it's hard to keep up. But it says, if I worked at iHeart and went to the beach and badmouthed iHeart, I would be fired. No, I don't think you would be. I get what you're saying. Completely understand what you're saying, but I don't think that's, first of all, if I'm at the beach bad-mouthing my employer, you don't know, first of all, they're my employer, but secondly, I'm at the beach in a private space. Somebody may overhear it, but that's still not a firing offense. And no, iHeart would not fire me if that happened. And believe me, it has happened, not with me, but with other people publicly bad-mouthing the company. They would be happy about it, but they're not going to fire me over it. I think that's a bad analogy. I think the issue is, you know, do you have the right to be a jackass? And are you, or you're going to lose your job over it? And does it make a difference that she worked for the Department of Justice? Because is she held to a higher standard? Does that mean the people who work for the government lose some of their First Amendment rights by the very fact that they work for the government? I agree that I wouldn't want to hire her. I don't even want to talk to her. I think she's a really unpleasant person. But did she have a right to do what she did? Is that a right protected by the First Amendment? Let's go to Tom in Framingham. Tom, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Good. I think the government absolutely has the right to fire her for doing that. First of all, she's by doing this, she shows she's at cross purposes with the president's agenda, and the part of his agenda was to back up the cops in D.C. to make the streets safer. Secondly, I admire Pam Bondi because this isn't the only person she's been able to fire. She fired 20 or so prosecutors, J6 prosecutors, people associated with the J6 case. And most of them are career people. If this woman was a political appointee, there'd be no question she could be fired because they serve at the pleasure of the president.
But she's not a political appointee. She's support staff.
Okay, I know. That's fine.
Is there a different? Well, my question, Tom, hang on. So my question is: are there different rules for different people? Do different people have different gradations of the First Amendment right? Is that what you're saying? Because let me finish. Because she's she's support staff, been working for the DOJ for a while. She's a paralegal. She's not a prosecutor. She's not a frontline person. She's not out there. I mean, does it demonstrate that she's not simpatico with the current administration? It sure does. But doesn't she have a right to be? Don't you have a right? I mean, not every government job requires that you be a supporter of the current administration. There is a massive group of people, most of them who work for the federal government, are not political appointees. They're career employees, meaning it doesn't matter who the administration is. They're apolitical jobs. And she had an apolitical job. So, are you're going to hold her to the same level that you're going to hold a J6 prosecutor?
And I'll tell you why. First of all, when Obama left office, I don't know if you know this, you probably don't, but he stuffed a lot of appointee positions into career billets. So a lot of these, the department, DOJ and other departments are infected with these viruses. And I remember hearing Bill Barr whining in front of Hillsdale saying, I don't have any control over my department because there's all these partisans below me. Well, this administration's taking a different tact. They're firing these people as they expose themselves. Now, I don't know what the courts are going to do, but she's been successful separating a lot of these viruses from, especially when Merrick Garland doubled the size of the Civil Rights Division. She got rid of quite a few of these people, too. Anything she does, I think, is justified. And also, this person, this National Guard person, of these people, they're hired by the president.
Yeah.
To enforce the president's policy.
Yeah.
And she's going, and you're saying, you're making all these superfluous statements. Well, no one knew who she was. Well, they do now.
Well, my superfluous statements, Tom, were in response to people saying, well, she was representing the DOJ. They weren't, I wasn't ad hoc making those statements. And my response to that was nobody knew she worked for the DOJ at that time. She was just somebody in the street doing this. The only reason why we know she works for the DOJ now is because she was stupid and she basically outed herself. And bragged about what she was doing, which says a lot about her character and who she is. And I don't want her working for me. But if she already is working for me, don't you have to have cause to fire somebody, not because they made a political statement to a National Guardsman across town?
Team gesture to a soldier who's been hired to.
It's offensive. Without a doubt, it was incredibly offensive. But does that make it a firing offense? Offensive things are covered by the First Amendment. You can be offensive. It doesn't mean that you this is part of the tolerance issue. I don't like her. I don't like finding myself in a position where I have to defend Elizabeth Baxter, to be honest with you. But here's the thing. I found what she did offensive. You found what she did offensive. There are some people who don't find what she did offensive. How long until somebody wants to fire you for something they think that you did was offensive that you don't think was? That's the problem with this. If you don't have freedom of speech for everybody, even for the people who do offensive things, then you don't have it for anybody. You can't pick and choose. Only the people you like, only the gestures you like, only the speech you agree with as to be protected by the First Amendment. Even people who are reprehensible have the right to free speech. That's my point, Tom.
She's exposed herself as what she is. She's a virus who's working counter at cross purposes with the administration.
But she wasn't working at cross purposes. That was her personal. I mean, she didn't do this in her workplace. Not at all. This was a personal statement that she made outside of the workplace. That did nothing to do with her job. That's why it's not superfluous that she was not identifiable as a DOJ. She wasn't wearing a big sign around her neck saying, I work for the DOJ, bleep Donald Trump. That's not what she did. She basically gave a personal statement that I do not agree with, that I find disgusting, but still, it's her right to do it, to a National Guardsman. Again, picking the wrong person. You're picking a military guy who deserves our respect and our thanks for what they're doing. And she chose to denigrate him, much like an earlier caller said, much like how the Vietnam vets were treated when they returned from Vietnam. I completely agree with that analogy. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have rights, even though you don't like her, even though you find her disgusting, even though you wouldn't hire her. If you had nobody else to hire, you still wouldn't hire her. I get all of that. That doesn't mean she doesn't have rights. We have to get away from this intolerance of other people's opinions, even those that we find reprehensible, because intolerance for that person means that you can also hold up intolerance for your opinions. And that's the problem. That's why you have to stand firm behind people you don't like even a little bit sometimes. Elizabeth Baxter, Basically, she was a paralegal at the DOJ, and by all accounts, not a very nice person. She did a pretty nasty thing on more than one occasion. She flipped off National Guard and verbally assaulted them while they were doing their duty in Washington, D.C. We know this because she bragged about it to the DOJ security guards when she went into work. And they relayed that information to the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who launched an investigation. She didn't want to just respond out of control. She looked into it. She talked to witnesses. They looked at the CCTV cameras, the films. The cameras are all over DC, so you can really see anybody doing anything on the street if you know the time, and discovered that this was true. This was accurate. She did this. And then she fired her. Was that the right thing to do? Was that censorship of Miss Baxter's First Amendment rights, no matter how distasteful you find what she did? Or was Pam Bondi right to fire her? That is the question. On the text line, which is 70470, let's see. Sandy, I'm looking at this from Pam Bondi's perspective, and I think she saw in this woman's behavior that she's showing her contempt for the administration and their policies. I have no doubt she will file a wrongful termination suit and may very well win, but I would have done the same thing. I completely understand why Pam Bondi did what she did. I do. I wouldn't hire this woman, and I would be very distraught if I found out she was on my staff. I would try. I don't know what the answer is, except that I don't think you can fire somebody who's not recognizably tied to your company, so not representing your company or your department, your administration, because they make a political statement. Let's face it, that's what it was. That is an anathema to the current administration. I don't like what she did. I find it disgusting. I wouldn't hire her, but I think she had the right to do it, and I don't think she deserves to lose her job for it. Maybe they needed to suspend her first and tell her to knock it off, that it would be a firing offense if she continued. Maybe she signed a document saying she wouldn't make political statements in public. I don't know if she did or not. But without knowing that, on the face of it, I would say you need to protect her rights, because by protecting Ms. Baxter's rights, you're protecting my rights too. Barbara in Baltimore, did Pam Bondi do the right thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with liking her, has nothing to do with her being disgusting. It has everything to do with the possibility of a leaker in the Department of Justice, and she can file a wrongful
termination,
firing suit, and she'll win, but she'll go to the mail department, baby. She will not go back into the Justice Department, where she's handling information that could be leaked to the media, information that could, who knows what kind of damage someone in her position. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why she was fired. It wasn't because of what she said and did and whether or not it was disgusting or not disgusting. Mm-hmm. It's because of her apparent abhorrence to President Trump, to the policies, and the possibility of a saboteur in the middle of the Justice Department. And they've got enough of them. So thank God she identified herself. And if she does get a job back, if she's a civil servant, but she won't come back into that department simply because of that. That's a breach of trust.
Well, Barbara,
she can no longer be trusted to carry out the policies of the administration. That's why she was fired.
Okay.
And Pam Bondi absolutely should have gotten rid of her. It has nothing to do with her First Amendment. None of that.
Well, I think it does have to do with the First Amendment, Barbara. What you're saying is that the First Amendment is taking a back seat to the possibility that she's a leaker. But here's my question for you. Would it have made a difference to your answer if she wasn't in the Department of Justice, if she were in the mailroom? Would she not have been fired if she were in the mailroom, or should she have been fired if she were in the mailroom?
Well, who would care? She's in a position where she's handling sensitive information.
Well, what if she's not in a position that she's handling sensitive information? She's not. She's in the Environment and Natural Resources. Let me finish. She's in the Environment and Natural Resources Division. She's not exactly. Barbara, let me finish. She's not exactly handling top secret information or really sensitive stuff. She's working with the EPA on, that's where she is. This is not a J6er prosecution. This is not any kind of political prosecution. This is basically natural resources where she is. It's not a sensitive job. And nowhere does Pam Bondi say that in any of the things that she's posted, including her outsourcing letter or anything like that, does she say anything about sensitive information? So I think your point is really good, and that you need to be, careful if somebody's is demonstrating opinions against the administration, and they're handling things that could be harmful to the administration. But there's no evidence of that here whatsoever. And that makes the question: Do people have different levels of rights depending on what department they work in? I mean, does she have the right to do what she did if she worked, in the trash department? Or does she have and she can't do it if she works in Pam Bondi's outer office? I mean, are there different levels of rights here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked as a paralegal. I worked for an attorney in Georgia in college. And being in natural resources, that doesn't negate the fact that there are a lot of things. You got environmentalists that are doing all kinds of harm. Her abhorrence to the policies was exposed. She's in the Justice Department. If she worked in the trash department or in the mailroom, who gives a crap? Who knows what goes across her desk? The position that she's in as a paralegal, she is handling legal information. That is not the kind of person you want working for you. And I hope a lot more of them expose themselves, because that's why we're dealing with what we call the deep state now.
Well, that's a point.
People who are embedded, and this is one of them.
Well, I understand that we need to ferret out the deep state, but here's the thing. You bring up some very good points, but nobody is accusing this woman of doing anything untoward at work. She did nothing at work. Let me finish, Barbara. I let you speak. Nobody at work says anything that she's done, anything to demonstrate anything other than doing her job completely well. Nobody has any complaints with what she's done. Nobody has any accusations that she's skewed anything or leaked anything or taken anything. None of that has occurred. That's supposition. So essentially what you're saying is she should be fired because she might do something in the future we have no idea. But isn't that true for everybody? So and maybe you have a point, and that she might be more apt to do something if you know her political beliefs are completely against the department that she's working in, but you have no evidence of that. One area, that is, she doesn't like the National Guard. I agree that it is very suspicious. I agree that what she did was reprehensible. But what you are saying is you are punishing her for her political beliefs and for exercising her First Amendment on the street. That's exactly what you're doing. You have very sound reasons for doing that, but that's what you're doing, Barbara.
That's not at all it. I guess because I have worked in positions handling information that makes a difference.
So have I.
Her views.
So have I, Barbara. But that doesn't mean I had to politically agree with the people I was working for, and it doesn't mean I couldn't be trusted because I didn't agree with the people working for. Now, I will give you this: she's a nut, because what she did was really, bizarre. To be honest with you, I don't care if I agree with them being here or not. It would never occur to me to do something, and I'm sure it would never occur to you to do what she did. And most people I know would be, what the hell's wrong with her? And I think there's something wrong. I think that's taking your political beliefs beyond what is rational and normal. And that causes me concern. And I would absolutely watch her more carefully if I knew that. I would suspend her and watch her more carefully. But I think she is going to win a wrongful termination suit if she brings it. She may get another job she likes better, quicker, and not bother with it. Or if she is what you suspect she is, which is a deep state person, she'll bring the lawsuit for the press. So we're about to find out exactly, how nutty she is and how much of a deep stater she is, because she may not be a deep stater at all. She just could be, imbalanced. Isn't that a possibility?
At the potential of damage that someone who's just adverse to what is going on, and especially it's cleaning up the DC so that she can walk around. So
that's true.
To me, that has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with how can she be trusted to follow through with the policies that are being put forth in the Justice Department. And she may get a job back, but she won't go back there.
Yeah.
That I'll bet my last paycheck on it.
Yeah.
Because she's a civil servant, she can go anywhere.
Yeah,
but,
she can.
I doubt if she would go back into that position.
Well, not only
it's
that,
a very sensitive position.
If you had been her boss, and they said, we fired her. And it depends on whether they decided they wanted to fight for her or not. But if you had been her boss and she wins a wrongful termination suit, don't you sideline her when she comes back in anyway? I mean, don't you? Okay, we have to hire her.
She wouldn't go back where she was.
Well,
she would not go back where she was. She would not be handling anything.
Barbara, if the thing is this, if they're ordered by a judge to take her back, then she does go back where she was. But it doesn't mean she does the exact same things that she did. It means that's what I'm saying to you. As her employer, wouldn't you then try to sideline her and give her not sensitive things to deal with? Because you've been ordered by a judge to take her back. You don't have a choice. She is going to go back. If that's what the judge's order is, you have no choice about it. That's what's going to happen. But then you just make sure that she's not handling sensitive stuff. You have to then watch her the whole time that she's there. Thank you so much for the call, Barbara. I appreciate it very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You are one of the more intelligent, articulate people it is my pleasure to speak with, either on the air or off the air, and I appreciate it. We're going to take 5 minutes here. I want to talk to somebody who I think you'll find very interesting, and then we'll go right back to the calls. That's Ann Vandersteel. And if you live in Massachusetts, then you remember the Rivera case, which was in the headlines and still is, when all 5 kids were removed by the Mass Department of Children and Families last March following a neglect complaint filed with the DCF by a pediatrician because the family decided not to give a vitamin K shot to their 7-month-old baby, I think at the time. The parents had been together for a dozen years raising their kids, were held in jail for weeks. And they were separated from their kids for, I think, like half a year, thereabouts. And they continued to be punished as if they had been guilty until proven innocent. Now, there is a movie, a documentary regarding this entire frightening, shocking experience. And it's going to premiere Sunday at Legacy Place. And American Made Action has produced a very compelling expose entitled Taken, State-Sanctioned Kidnapping, set to premiere, as I said, this Sunday. Jeff was going to be there, but as we all know, he's been in a horrible accident, in that he was his ribs were smashed when he was taking a bus from Croatia, and he will not be able to be there. But we wanted to help out the movie because it's a very important documentary that people see. And so we're going to speak with Ann Vandersteel, who is also, besides being an investigative journalist, one of the executive producers. Hi, Ann. How are you today?
Oh, Sandy, I'm so happy to be with Cooner Country this morning. Our hearts and prayers and love goes out to you all and Jeff Cooner. The Cooner Country folks are like none other. I don't think there's an audience out there better in the country than the Cooner Country crew. I just am so honored to be with you all. And, of course, we are so upset about Jeff's accident. We want him to get well, and I know how desperately he wants to be there because he stepped into the ring with us and got on those steps in the State House of Massachusetts, and he called out Department of Children and Families and talked about the unconstitutional and unwarranted seizure of the children of the Rivera family. And he's been with us every step. So we just wish him well. And we are just so grateful that the Cooner Country has come out and supported this effort to get not only the Rivera family reunified, but, get this story told with our documentary Taken, State-Sanctioned Kidnapping. So we're just honored. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us. And I want to ask you, when did you first become aware of what was happening with the Riveras?
Well, a good friend of ours who's also a good friend of your station, Joan Quinn Eastman, who I know you know very well, brought this to our attention, and immediately Maureen Steele, my co-founder, jumped on doing some looking into the articles and media that had already been published. And then, of course, we got engaged, started speaking with the Rivera family, and got up to Boston as soon as possible to put together this documentary with our producer, Chris Tribble. And I have to tell you, the cast that we've assembled, because the American Made Action has an organization inside of it called our United Law Coalition, which now is representing the Rivera family, Attorney Greg Hession, Attorney Bill Gens. This organization is not only representing Izzy on the criminal side, which is a joke, because how can you be familially kidnapping anybody unless, with the state deciding that you kidnapped your own family, when in fact the wife and children went with their father and husband lawfully and lovingly to escape persecution by the state, Massachusetts Department of Children and Families, because they wanted to enforce a vitamin K shot. I'm sorry, Sandy, if anybody can show me the law about a vitamin K shot for your 9-month-old, I will recant and eat my words, but frankly, there is no law, and we all know it. And that was admitted by the pediatrician who filed this complaint, by the way. It's just total lunacy. So we're putting it together and exposing it, and you guys are walking arm in arm with us, and we're so grateful.
So the documentary is airing at Legacy Place, 7 p.m. on Sunday. How do people get tickets to see this?
Actually, if you go to our website, AmericanMadeFoundation.org, we have a VIP event starting at 6:30, the general public can gather. They can get tickets at AmericanMadeFoundation.org. We will also live stream it at AmericanMadeFoundation.org at the Legacy Place Theater in Dedham, Massachusetts. It's going to be a very powerful screening, and we'd love to see everybody from Cooner Country attend. The family, the filmmakers, and those fighting in this injustice, we're all going to be there. We'd love to meet with folks on the VIP side privately and, give them more of a download. And we have some stuff we're going to be dropping at the theater as well. Some very exciting stuff, because we don't intend to let this lay quietly. We are taking this everywhere across the country, and there's going to be federal litigation following. So more to come on that at the theater.
Wow. Do you have any plans to show this documentary anywhere else, or is this the one showing at the moment?
This is right now. Oh, no. We have actually been nominated for a New England Emmy, and we've got other locations.
Congratulations.
Around the country. Yeah. So we'll be taking this show on the road. We've got filming that's going to be, premieres that'll be in Florida, in New Hampshire, and other states around the country. We're taking this to other, film festivals, because it is so riveting. It's an hour documentary, and it just absolutely captures the essence of what's happening. Sandy, I want to let your audience, the Cooner Country audience, are the best out there, and they understand families are the backbone of this country, like our small businesses. And when you talk about trying to just, save America, make America great, state-sanctioned kidnapping isn't a partisan issue. It goes across Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, doesn't matter. They target a family and they zoom in because it's about money and it's about child trafficking. And the corruption that we've documented in the court system is unbelievable. When I tell you we have PayPal receipts now of judges taking bribes to keep these families separated, this is what we're talking about. It is despicable, and it has to end. And this is our mission. And so we're showing the mission through this one particular family, but it's not a one-off. And so Cooner Country, I'm sure there's members in Cooner Country that have been victimized by Department of Children and Families, and we really want to see those families in the seats. We want to meet with them at the theaters. We have families that are flying in from around the country for this because they want to be a part of the solution, and we intend to make that solution a reality with American Made Foundation and American Made Action.
Well, I can tell you that Jeff is heartbroken that he's not going to be there, but I know he'll be watching on the live streaming because he is so excited about this project that you've done, and he feels so strongly about it. So again, if everybody wants tickets, the movie is at Legacy Place Showcase Cinema. That's in Dedham, right? Isn't it, Ann?
It's in Dedham. Get your tickets online at AmericanMadeFoundation.org. AmericanMadeFoundation.org.
And the showtime is this Sunday, 6 p.m. Go there, be square if you don't go. So, and we're looking forward to seeing it. I'm going to try to live stream it myself because I wish I could be there, but I can't. So, but we do want to see it. My husband and I are both very excited about seeing it. God bless the Riveras. Please give them our best, and good luck with the movie. You are working on the side of the angels here, my friend.
Well, Sandy, thank you so much. And thank you for stepping in for Jeff. God knows he is a tour de force. And, to be standing in his shoes right now, I can only imagine how daunting it is.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate you for taking that mantle for him, because he is just he is Boston's bulldozer, and he is the voice and the bullhorn for the Cooner Country. And you guys just do an incredible job. So we love Cooner Country. We love seeing them at the State House in Massachusetts, and we hope to see them at the theater in Dedham, Massachusetts. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ann. We appreciate you being with us. That was Ann Vandersteel of American Made Foundation Action.org, where you can go to get your tickets for Taken, which airs this Sunday in Dedham at the Legacy Place Showcase at 6 o'clock. They will also live stream it, but it sounds to me like if you can make it live in person, it sounds like something really worth going out for and getting a chance to meet the people involved in what is a pretty shocking story here in America. So I want to get back to what we're talking about before, which is censorship. And censorship to me is the wholesale editing of people's freedom under the First Amendment. And you have and I know a lot of people don't agree with me regarding Elizabeth Baxter, the paralegal who was fired at the DOJ for flipping off the National Guard, among other things. But to me, and I'm basically a strict constructionist when it comes to the First Amendment, if I don't protect somebody's rights who I don't like and who I don't agree with, then who's going to protect my rights when my rights are under fire and my freedom of speech is being attacked? That's how I feel about it. And I understand that this particular person is not winning friends and influencing people unless they are left-wing loonies. They are basically, she's disgusting what she did, without a doubt. But that's when standing by your principles matters. When you have to defend somebody you don't agree with, that's when it actually means something. It's easy to defend something that you agree with. It's not easy to defend something you don't agree with. And I think we've lost sight of that. There's a whole generation of people who only defend things or only will even listen to people that they agree with. And for me, that's where your First Amendment rights go out the window, when you can't or when you won't not just even tolerate somebody on the other side, but don't defend them. Because remember, those are your rights you're defending. Even if it's not your actions, it is your right. And people lose sight of that. And I understand Barbara's position. I understand a lot of other callers' positions. They don't like what this woman did. And it reflects badly upon the Department of Justice. And maybe this woman is a leaker, but nobody's accused her of being a leaker. The only thing they've accused her of is flipping off the National Guard. 617-266-6868 is the number here. The text number is 70470. We're talking about censorship, and particularly the form of censorship that comes when somebody not at their job did something pretty unpleasant. You know, she flipped off National Guard, guarding, on the front lines, trying to stop crime in D.C., flipped them off and insulted them. It turns out she was a paralegal for the DOJ, and not a very smart one at that, because she bragged about this to the security guards at the DOJ. They informed the Attorney General, who, upon investigation, discovered it was true. She had done that and did it more than once, and she was fired. My position is, I think that's a little bit much. I think you tell her, don't do that anymore, and, that's not reflecting well upon your job, but you don't fire her, do you, when you first find out? I mean, they didn't warn her, they just fired her, because it is an expression of her First Amendment rights. I don't agree with it. I find it loathsome, to be honest with you, but she has the right to do it. And that to me is the issue. Do you protect the rights of people that you don't like? Do you protect the rights of people that you don't agree with? I think you do, because that's how you protect your own rights. But not everybody agrees with me. Kenneth in Wakefield, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Kenneth?
You're good, too. I think you're looking at it from the wrong perspective.
Okay.
I think everybody should be protected from being harassed at their place of work.
Mm-hmm.
That National Guardsman was at his place of work. She was using her First Amendment rights when she went and she was saying bad things to him and flipping him off and everything. Mm-hmm. But she was a federal employee also, just like the National Guardsman.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a federal employee and I go to another place where there are other federal employees and I harass them every day, that's harassment. That's not my First Amendment right. She was harassing other federal employees simply because of who they work for, the same company she worked for. You do not allow that in any company. The federal government is the largest employer in the United States,
mm-hmm.
and as such, they have the right to protect their employees from other employees. And she should have been fired immediately. She would have not known they would have not known who she was if she was not bragging about it,
mm-hmm.
thinking what she was done was something fantastic. If you are harassing people, that would be like if she was let's do it so this way people in Massachusetts can understand it.
Okay.
Let's say she was a white man and she was going into a federal building and she was an employee and she was calling people the N-word. And then she was leaving, but nobody knew who she was. Oh, that would be terrible. And as soon as she was caught, she would be fired for harassing people. They would call her a racist. Well, what she is an elitist who thinks she's better than somebody who's so dumb the only thing they can do is be in the military. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt in my mind that is her opinion.
I agree with you.
In the higher level schools in these liberal colleges now where they are teaching socialism, not working knowledge. That's just my opinion.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Kenneth. I think she's a bleep hole of the first order, without a doubt. And I think that's probably is exactly what her attitude is. And this is why I don't like her, don't want her to work for me, don't want to socialize with her, want nothing to do with her. But doesn't she have a right to say what she wants to say? I mean, she didn't do it in her workplace. And I understand you're saying, you know, I really like your argument that the National Guardsman was in his workplace and she was harassing him. Now, that kind of raises it, in my opinion, to almost a criminal action when you have somebody in the military who's on duty in their job and they can't walk away. And as a prior texter pointed out, they can't respond in any way because they would be hauled up and reprimanded for responding. You know, I think that's an interesting argument as to her actions. And maybe if you raise them to a higher level, like the guy who threw the sandwich at the guard, that was assault. If it hit him, that was assault and battery, and he's being brought up on those charges. Maybe that's something that you could look into for her too. But if it's not the level of a criminal assault, or some kind of criminal conduct, then doesn't she have the right to do it?
Has the right to do it until she became known to be a federal employee, a co-worker, a person who's employed by the same company.
That's the point.
The federal government.
She outed herself, without a doubt. She's not the brightest bulb on the tree, but they didn't know when she did it. Nobody knew who she was. So you're retroactively applying that. Nobody knew who she was when she did that. They didn't know. So, I mean, the reason why they find out is because she's an idiot. But at the same point in time, you're retroactively saying, well, she was an employee at the time, but they didn't know that then. They had no idea that she was an employee of the federal government when she did that. Doesn't that change things for you a little bit?
Well, because the bottom line is she's a federal employee, and she knew she was a federal employee, and she knew she was harassing another federal employee. She was aware of what she was doing that was against civil service law. You are not allowed to harass other people you work with.
Okay.
Outside your workspace. If you're in your workspace, then it will be taken care of immediately because there's somebody there to take care of it. Mm-hmm. She was going anonymously, sneaking, and doing something that she knew was wrong. And she didn't do it just once. She did it many times.
Yeah.
And for that reason, she does not deserve to be suspended because she was a serial harasser. Mm. And she was harassing the uniform, which is the federal government. Yep. And she cannot harass her federal workers, fellow employees. That makes you a bad employee under any circumstances, and you should be fired.
Okay.
Civil service is very hard to fire people, and that's one of the things you can fire them for.
Okay.
They can come to work and sit on their butt and say, this is to the best of my ability, and that's all I can do. They can't fire them. But if they go in and they harass the guy next to them, they can let them go.
Well, you are very adept at pushing the envelope and finding a good excuse to get done what you need to get done, Kenneth. That might make you very effective in both your personal life and in your workplace. Thank you for the call. You gave me a lot to think about there. I appreciate it. Let's talk to Peter in Florida. Peter, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Living large. How about yourself?
Me too, Peter. So did Pam Bondi do the right thing here in firing Ms. Baxter?
Yes, but for the wrong reason.
Okay.
When you show someone your middle finger, that's assault because you're saying, I can still draw a 130-pound bowstring and kill you from 200 paces, which is the origin of the gesture, the French and the English.
I did not know that, Peter. That's new information for me. I had no idea where that gesture came from. That's pretty... Hang on for a second, Peter. We're up against a break. I want to hold you there, and we'll come back to you on the other side. 617-266-6868 is the number here. This is Sandy Shack, sitting in for Jeff Cooner, who will be back on Monday. We're talking about censorship and its application to a case in Washington, D.C., where Pam Bondi fired a paralegal who has really bad judgment and does not appear to be a particularly nice person, and who might even be an agent for the deep state. We don't know. But she flipped off some National Guardsmen and insulted them verbally and was fired for her troubles. And I was speaking with, before the break, I was speaking with a Peter in Florida, and he said that particular gesture that she used was actually a threatening gesture, and it was assault because it harkens back to the days when you would use your middle finger to bring back a bowstring. And so it was originally meant to be a threat. I think it's a threat of another sort now, but okay, that's one way to look at it, is she was threatening them, and isn't that a firing offense? Another way to look at it is the fact that she was exercising her freedom of speech, and you may find it revolting what she did, but isn't it still protected speech, and should she have been fired for it? Let's go to Lisa in Maine. Lisa, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am fine, thank you, Lisa. Did Pam Bondi do the right thing?
Absolutely. Okay. This woman is not mentally together.
Mm-hmm.
And if this was an unprovoked act that she performed 3 times in public against the National Guard, what does she do when she's provoked? And
that's a really good point. That's a very good point.
You say that she is having her First Amendment rights diminished by being fired, but I don't believe that's the case. Okay. I think had she been arrested, yes, then her rights had been diminished. But she is working for the United States government, and I am willing to bet there's a clause in her contract when she was hired that addresses behavior outside of the workplace. All of these corporations, these massive corporations that hire these celebrities and these athletes, they do something wrong on the outside, they are let go because they do not properly represent the company. And I don't think this is any different.
Well, I agree with you if there is an agreement that she signed that said that she will represent the Department of Justice in a certain manner at all times, then absolutely, I think you're correct. Well, we have no evidence that there was any such agreement in this particular case. She's a paralegal. She's not, a high-level prosecutor with a personal services contract. She is a civil servant covered probably by the government employees union, which means there will be some kind of recourse for this, I'm sure. Somebody's going to bring an action for wrongful termination or something along those lines. But I agree with you. If there is an agreement like that, then without a doubt, Pam Bondi was in her rights. But if there's not an agreement, and she was exercising her freedom of speech, you have more things to lose than just your freedom. I mean, when you're arrested, you lose your freedom, but loss of livelihood is also right up there in one of those things that is protected, unless you do something egregiously wrong. And did she do something egregiously wrong, or did she just do something that was revolting? I think it's just revolting, and I think it's intolerant not to give her a warning, unless, as you said, she signed an agreement. That's different. I think you absolutely are correct. If she has signed a contract saying that she will not do something that's embarrassing to the administration, then Pam Bondi didn't even need to blink an eye. It was done. But what if she didn't, Lisa?
Well, I still believe 90% of what's wrong with our world today is there are no consequences for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, she had every right to do what she did, but there are consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And social media these days, they'll shame you for doing the least little thing ever. And she needs to know, yes, okay, she had the right to do this, but there are consequences. And losing your job, that's one of them.
Yeah, so you're saying she has a right to say what she did. She doesn't have a right to the job at the DOJ.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very reasonable response, I think, Lisa. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. I think that's very well thought out. I tend to hold the First Amendment almost sacrosanct. I think there are very few exceptions to it. And it is one of those things that I think has to be jealously and zealously guarded, to the point where even when people do something that revolts you, that you find abhorrent, you still have to protect them. And this is one of those cases for me, but I understand it's not for many other people. David in Quincy, welcome to WRKO. How are you, David?
You're doing a good job for Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sandy, regarding the censorship and so on, but, when when Volodymyr Zhukovsky, the Ukrainian truck driver that was the immigrant and driving illegally, killed our 7 U.S. Marines up in Randolph, New Hampshire on Route 2, the Jarheads Motorcycle Club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, when Volodymyr Zhukovsky was vindicated of all charges, he was exonerated, he wasn't found guilty of anything. Well, I was calling in, and you were screening the calls, and I wanted to tell Cooner Country why Volodymyr Zhukovsky was found not guilty of all charges, not guilty of a thing. Mm-hmm. And how the fix was put in by the Biden State Department, okay, ordered the Biden Justice Department and ordered the legal authorities in New Hampshire that Volodymyr Zhukovsky was in no wise to be found guilty of anything. The fix was put in. And the reason the fix was put in was that was when they were putting the first big aid package together for Volodymyr Zelensky.
Oh, okay, David, I appreciate that, but you're getting kind of far afield here for me. So you're saying that we censored you when you called in? Is that what you're saying?
You censored me.
Yeah. Well, there are multiple reasons. I admit that I have censored people. I did it in the beginning of the show. There's multiple reasons why you could be censored. One, you may not have been directly on topic. And that is, you have the right to say whatever you want to say, but you don't, just like what our last caller was saying, that Miss Baxter had a right to say what she said. She didn't have a right to the job at the DOJ. You have a right to say what you say, but you don't have a right necessarily to say it on the show when we're talking about something else. That's, it's a radio program. And so you can say what you want about the topic, but you have to stay on topic because that's how the radio program works. And that's not the government censoring. That's us trying to keep you on topic. Just like right now, I said, you're talking about all this underlying stuff. Okay, I get it. You have a right to say that, but we're talking about something else. You don't have a carte blanche to hijack the program in regard to topics, but you certainly have the right to say what you want to say. It's just, you got to be on topic. That's the difference. So yes, that is censorship of a sort. Absolutely, positively, without a doubt. And we do that sometimes, which is one of the things that I opened the show with, that yes, as a matter of fact, censorship does occur for various reasons. One of which is, you can't say the 7 deadly words on the air, according to the Supreme Court. You can't slander somebody, so you got to have proof if you're going to make a criminal accusation. And we are going to keep you on topic because that's how the program progresses. It doesn't mean you can't say it. It just means you can't say it at this moment in time where we are. And that's what we do. So without a doubt, I have censored people. But I didn't take away your job. I didn't arrest you. I didn't do any of these things that we're talking about on a higher level in regard to censorship. Let's go to Rob in Maine. Rob, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Oh, hi, Sandy. And I think I'm on topic because you mentioned earlier that you asked a question if any people have
been censored. Yeah.
And I'm the censored boy. But before I say that, just one or two funny stories about that. But anyway, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I don't want to go all the reasons. Your wonderful listener and writing crowd have touched all of the, well, not all, but most of the right reasons, as have you, why you're correct. This is a lady who's not in a high functioning job. So, and Pam Bundy, if she knew about that, yeah, that might change things a little bit about her agreement and all the rest of it. But apart from hitting all the right points, they've helped me very much because I'm actually doing a study of the derangement syndrome with my clinical background and my research background in public health. But anyway, you know what they've also done? They've added to my list of things that help to define and understand why people get Trump derangement syndrome. The lady that said this lady can walk up to armed national troop soldiers, some maybe armed, maybe not armed, but certainly in uniform.
Yeah.
Think of what she could do to people just that aren't armed soldiers. That was a great point. And I think that and many other things your great listeners have brought up will help us understand and maybe even help people with Trump derangement syndrome. So that's my 2 cents, but I thought I'd raise that with you. Thanks for all you guys do, and you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. Yeah, there's no doubt that this woman has TDS. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, who in their right mind goes up to a uniformed officer and flips them the bird and yells at them? And we're not talking about like he cut her off in traffic. He's at his job. He's at his job assisting police in D.C., and she finds it necessary to do. I mean, who does that unless they have a screw loose? But, and I think without a doubt she does. And she needs most likely, some therapy, some help along the way here. Her life is to be pretty dark if she thinks that that's appropriate behavior. But I don't think you necessarily lose your job over that unless that translates to something else at work. Is she doing that at work? Is when she's in the workplace, is she abusive to other people? Is she leaking information to the press? These are all things that would, in my opinion, make her a danger in the workplace and something. And then, okay, I can see why you would fire her. In this case, she did something not in her workplace. Nothing to do with her job, and nobody has made any accusations that she has done anything in the workplace that would give you a window into this TDS situation. This is Sandy Shack in for Jeff Cooner here on the Cooner Report. The text number 70470-207 says giving a National Guard the finger in this case is protecting political speech, no firing. That's kind of how that is how I feel about it. I feel the same way. It is in fact protected speech. I don't think she should have lost her job over it. I think people have made very good arguments as to why it's okay to fire her. And obviously Pam Bondi feels the same, the Attorney General, or she would not have fired Elizabeth Baxter, the paralegal in the Environment Office of the DOJ, who bragged about flipping the bird to National Guard and insulting them a couple times, more than once, I think 3. And the only reason why we know she did it is because she bragged to security guards at the DOJ that she did it. That's stupid to be not put too fine a point on it. But, she's not being fired for being stupid. She's fired for what is really protected political speech. I don't like it. I don't support it. I think she's a piece of work, but it's protected rights. And if I protect her rights, then I can protect your rights too, and my rights as well. And that's what it all comes down to for me. Let's go to Nancy in Norwood. Nancy, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
So I was a federal employee, and I did literally employee relations for 32 years. Mm-hmm. So first, let me say I'm blown away that they would fire somebody for this, only because it's next to impossible to get rid of a federal employee generally. Mm-hmm. So leave that on the table. I mean, I've entertained people with stories of things that people have done that I've tried to get rid of and couldn't do it. I actually, in what stage in my career, I wrote a letter to a quality assurance specialist on an aircraft and told them, by the way, even though we didn't specifically tell you can't come to work drunk, you can't. I'm paraphrasing now, but literally, I wrote a letter that said that.
Oh, my heavens.
That said, he was in a union. And you had mentioned, maybe she was in a union. And so generally, she's probably not going to be in a union because DOJ has very few unionized positions. Mm-hmm. So that would be the first thing. I'm sure she's not. So she has a little less, obviously. Generally speaking, they're very afraid to go against the union.
Yeah.
And then I've heard people say, maybe she was a lower level. As a paralegal specialist in D.C., mm-hmm. she's making over $100,000. So she's not like a really lower level, at that stage. Mm-hmm. So the DOJ priorities, they have 2 things mainly that they do. They prosecute federal crimes, and then they defend federal employees who are being sued by another entity. Generally, that would be like a VA doctor gets sued for the level of care that they gave. So then the DOJ is responsible for defending that person. And I'm thinking that that's how they're coming at this. So when you start as a federal employee, you sign, and I don't work there anymore, so I don't remember what the words. I want to say it's like the Federal Employee Rules of Conduct. Mm-hmm. And one of those things, it says that you can be disciplined for off-duty conduct. And the one thing that they have to do, they have to establish a connection or a nexus between what your job responsibilities are and what you did. And I'm thinking that that's, and then I think the other word is you have to promote the efficiency of the service. And I'm thinking that that's the claim that they're making, that in order to show that she would be impartial in working on cases, because so if you picture a paralegal specialist, she's getting in, like if somebody gets sued, she's getting all of the documentation in, and she has to go through that and decide, how to parse it so that the attorneys can work on it. If she's has this predilection to not be on the side of a federal employee, then there could be things that she could throw in the defense's favor. And I'm thinking that that's where they're going at with it.
Okay. That makes sense to me. That would make a great, because I have to think that Pam Bondi wouldn't just be firing somebody for the hell of it. Do you know what I mean? I think she would have, she's a very smart woman, and she was an amazing AG for Florida. So she has to know where she's standing before she does something. And I keep thinking there's something we don't know. The fact that I love what you were talking about in regard to the nexus between her job and the behavior. And I think that makes a great deal of sense that they're trying to tie it the way you suggested. They're trying to tie it together. That would mean to me that that she gave it a lot more thought than I don't like you, you're out, or you could be a member of the deep state, you're out. Both of those to me are not solid arguments. But she had in the letter there, Nancy, it says that she can appeal within 30 days. In your experience working for the government for so long, how many of those appeals are successful?
Sadly, a lot of them are. I had somebody that did multiple things over the course of 18 months, just really bad. Like she needed to be gone. Everybody agreed with it. But unfortunately, a lot of them goes to MSPB, Merit State Protection Board. It's not state. I'm forgetting the letters.
That's
just
okay.
Because of being on the radio.
Yeah.
But the MSPB generally tends to go overwhelmingly. They usually side with the employees. So unfortunately, a lot of them are successful. But you're exactly right. Pam Bondi's an attorney, and the attorneys don't like to take on cases that they can't win.
Yeah.
So I have to think the other thing is I'm guessing that you never go from, employee to fired. You go from employee to reprimand to suspension. So I have to think that maybe she did something somewhere else.
So there's something already in the file that we don't know about, that maybe there is a reprimand in her file, or maybe she was suspended and we don't know about it. Because although I think we would know about it if it's a suspension. So I'm thinking maybe it was a reprimand that was already in her file. And so what are you saying, that it's like more than one strike and you're out? So that you have to have more than just one thing for them just to out and out fire you like this?
Generally speaking, yes, I would say that. Now, then you get into, so if it's a reprimand, it might stay in the file for, and that's usually, it might be for 30 days, 60.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. We have to cut you off because we're up against the hard breakout. But that's fascinating. Thank you so much for calling in, Nancy. I really appreciate it.